What's up guys, Single Player Nacho here. Today we have a very creepy video planned. We're taking an in-depth look at the lore behind the twins in Dead by Daylight. That's right, the French conjoined twins known as Victor and Charlotte Deshays are an absolute sight to behold. I mean, Jesus Christ. You have Charlotte, who has the permanent face of, hey, you just stole my Big Mac. Which, by the way, she has an open chest, I just want to point that out, and then a very disgusting gaping hole in that chest. Very few designs will actually gross me out, but this one with the gaping injury hole is just grotesque. And to add to the grotesqueness, in that chest, which acts as a cave, is a little cave dweller, little demonic Victor Deshays. Now you can make an argument that Charlotte looks somewhat normal, but Victor is a baby from hell. And it would be incorrect to call Victor a baby because the twins are actually the same age. So that's the visual overlook of the twins. Very interesting stuff. What is the backstory behind these two? If it wasn't already obvious, these two are not from our time. They are plucked out of the 17th century where they were born, and in that era, it was actually pretty damn hard for conjoined twins to have been born. So what do we all know about the 17th century? Everyone thought that witches and demons were real. One glance at these two and you would probably believe that as well. So at first Charlotte was born and she seemed like a normal baby, and then attached to her lower chest was a tiny little Victor. To no surprise, the nurse who was delivering these two screamed from the top of her lungs, ran out to find some help to actually arrest the Deshays family, but the Deshays did not stay put. They made their escape, which is pretty surprising, given at those times they would just give the baby up in fear for their own lives. But it goes to show how protective or how close the bond was already, even at the time of birth, that these twins had with their mother Madeleine. And so began the French Revolution, if you will. These French villagers looked for one, or in this case, two babies that were thought to have been born out of witchcraft. It's just sad to think that there was this huge commotion over these two newborns. Like, come on, leave them alone. For most of their childhood, the twins only ran away. That's all they learned how to do. Running from camp to camp, village to village, outside of the nosy-ass witch hunters that were looking for them. During this time, the twins' mother was tasked with recovering food, hunting, and getting any kind of nutrition for her two twins, who are now 5 years old. This is 5 years into their escape plan. Now I'm guessing all that moving around, the close calls, and the extreme childbirth really put a number on Mother Deshays, and so she started getting older and sicker as a result. 5-year-old Charlotte was put in charge of their lives now. And it's at this point where a 5-year-old is put in charge of the family. You might be asking yourself, where is Father Deshays? Nowhere to be found. This is just a hypothetical thought, but a lot of these superstitious births are a result of mating out of wedlock, or there's some dark discrepancy. So little Charlotte would put on a bunch of clothes that would easily hide Victor underneath her coats. She'd go to food vendors and try to play off this already strange scenario of a 5-year-old asking for food. So little by little, the village people became more and more suspicious of this child, and the Deshays' safety became more and more compromised. So one cold, dark night, the Deshays family's luck finally ran out. The witch hunters successfully found their location, tore their camp down, subdued the 5-year-old Charlotte and Victor, and an even weaker Madeleine Deshays, who was at this point pretty much dead. Now I personally can't help but to feel pretty sad for the Deshays family. They didn't have a choice except to hide from these crazy ass people, and for their entire childhood, that's all they knew. Charlotte and Victor were constantly stared at, suspected, belittled. They weren't normal. It sucks. Their tragedy gets even worse when their mother's screams were no more. During their capture, the twins witnessed their mother's execution, or so they thought. The spineless bastards actually took the twins' mother's almost lifeless body to court, where she was convicted for demonship, I guess, and her punishment gets even more brutal. She was to be burned alive at the stake, with their twin babies forced to watch the entire event. She tried her best to cry out to them, "Look away," or "Turn your heads," but this was the fire that burned into the twins' hearts. Those hearts were filled with vengeance, violence, and grief. You could actually probably pinpoint this exact moment to where the twins, who were thought to be demons, became the monsters they were seen as. So the twins were caught, Deshays' mother dead. What happens next? While they were still captured by the government of France, This is probably the sickest part of the entire tale. They were sold to a mysterious group. So this entire notion of witchcraft and demon babies was complete bullshit. These hunters just wanted a profit off of these two poor souls. It's extremely hypocritical and sad. So who was this group and what did they want with the twins? Although they don't have an official name, they were easy to identify because all of the members of this group wore black robes. So you could probably guess where this is headed. This was not a good group of individuals that just wanted to free the twins. No, they actually performed horrible experiments on them. As these experiments were performed, Victor, the little twin baby, became more and more vicious. He would attack his captors with his claws and teeth, as Charlotte became more of the protector of the two twins. So some of the experiments were pretty disturbing. The twins were forcefully examined, stuff like that, but other experiments were tests for who knows what. A little excerpt from their bio states: one day they would be made to break the neck of a small gray bird. The next, they would bleed their fingers into a vase of roses. Every 7th day, they would sleep with the branch of a damp oak beneath their pillow. Then there was the chanting, a never-ending chorus from cloaked figures on scheduled intervals. Now my interpretation of these experiments is that this group didn't want to know what Charlotte and Victor were, but what they were capable of, for reasons unknown. But as time passed, the necessity of keeping Victor and Charlotte alive was becoming more and more dim. A final ritual was being set up. This would have been the last moment for the twins to escape. As the twins were being propped up for the ritual, in a moment's notice, Victor stretches his tiny little hands as far as he can to drop a group of candles on the floor, and the hooded figure's temple was set ablaze. Even though there was smoke all over the place and visibility was very low, this was the chance for the twins to finally escape. So Charlotte grabbed Victor and held him tight through the smoke, running towards an exit of the temple. Charlotte coughed and she was running out of oxygen until she ran far away from that temple, far enough to be at a safe distance. As she regained her breath, she checked on her brother Victor, and he did not respond. Charlotte tried her best to revive her brother, but it was too late. The twins had finally escaped persecution after all this time, and they were back on the run, but it came at a cost. So Charlotte decided to keep living, even though she was without her brother, her mother, anyone she ever loved. She'd think to herself, I will live for them. She even kept Victor's dead corpse. Now, of course, there's no happy ending here. Charlotte continued to hide her identity, running away from that same cultist group, as well as any witch hunters looking to reclaim their prize. Charlotte would turn to a life of crime. She'd steal food from merchants, and when those robberies didn't go her way, she'd murder them. Violence started popping up left and right for Charlotte. Strangely enough, still attached to Charlotte's chest was Victor's corpse, who would not decompose. In fact, his limbs would ooze black pus. It was almost as if the more crime committed by Charlotte, all of the hatred she gained for humanity went towards Victor's now dead corpse. Years of failed robbery attempts, on the run from village to camp, and no clear home. Charlotte thought it was time to finally accept her fate. She and her twin brother were a monstrosity, and her life was forever to be persecuted. An extremely cold winter brought Charlotte down to her knees. Her body could not keep up with all the experiments that were conducted on her, and she slowly but surely started to give out. Just as Charlotte was headed towards the light, a vicious scream pierced her ears. It was her twin brother Victor who would miraculously come back to life. But this was not the Victor from before. He had a more demonic face, eyes filled with bloodlust. He took one look at Charlotte, and he ran towards the forest. Charlotte, who was now filled with life, ran after her brother, as he was the only family she ever knew. You have to remember that Charlotte was still on the run from the black-hooded cultists. The very last thing she needed was a commotion to alert them. Charlotte chased and chased through the forest for her brother until she finally cornered him. She found him, but unfortunately, two mysterious hands snatched Victor away from Charlotte, and it disappeared in the fog of the forest. Charlotte knew who it was. She knew who took her brother. For years and years of running away from them, even the smallest thought or memory of them filled her with hate. It was the cultists coming to collect. Charlotte was no longer thinking about her own death. She was reinvigorated with strength and brute force, grabbed her sickle, and headed towards the city to save her brother Victor. Now with the origins out of the way, let's look at some items in order to add to the trivia and personification of these characters. And first up, it's that ceremonial candlestick or candelabrum, which is formerly known as. This is the same candlestick that essentially freed the twins from the cultist group. If it wasn't for Victor's little tiny baby hand, this candlestick wouldn't have been able to start that fire in that temple. Next up, we have a bloody black hood. Now the annotation here is pretty interesting. It says, a hood from one of the men that hunted Charlotte. Soon he became the prey. Of course, those black hooded cultists tormented Charlotte for so long. I'm sure she sees nothing but red when she sees a black hood. And here's some baby teeth. This is actually Victor's baby teeth, and they're unusually sharp according to the comment here. And speaking of Victor's mouth, here's Victor's soldier, which is actually Victor's favorite toy. But more interesting than that, we catch a glimpse of Victor's speech pattern. So now we know what he talks like, I guess. Kitch, kull, bod, man. Victor Deshays, or Deshays. This is a spinning top, and apparently the twins were fighting over it at some point. You have to remember, these were both kids and they were siblings, and siblings always fight. A little comment that Charlotte says is, hush, hush. It is yours then. So Charlotte is obviously the nicer sibling of the two. And here's a forest stew, and attached to this is a comment made by Madeline Deshays, the twins' mother. Eat, eat, child. You'll feel better when it's down. This is a silencing cloth, and here's the really interesting description. A coarse strip of cloth that a 5-year-old Charlotte would put in her mouth stopped her from screaming when witch hunters were nearby. And that's an extremely heartbreaking description. This 5-year-old was so terrified of these assholes, you know? It sucks. And lastly, we have the iridescent pendant, which is actually a portrait of Madeline Deshays, so we can kind of see what the twins' mother looked like. And here's a little quotation by Madeline herself. Your binding is no curse, my loves. It is your strength to draw upon. And one last item of interest for the trivia is this blade, which is called the Blade of Martial, which is actually a heavily populated city of France. Now, after Charlotte escaped the wooden temple that belonged to the cultists, she became a robber and she used a sickle. And this is the sickle that she used, and it's pretty interesting that we can pinpoint which location in France Charlotte is based on. And here's a description of the sickle. Tales warned of a demon who skulked the gutters of Martial with shimmering blade in hand. In reality, it was a battered sickle Charlotte stole from a farmer's home and modified it to her liking. Really cool. Really cool, Charlotte. I like how you customized your own kill weapon. Now, before I give my own personal thoughts and opinions on this character, I just want to say props to the DBD team for creating this entire origin story. It's very well done. So in my mind, the monster that is known as the twins was born with the amount of resistance against their lives. It's like everyone that wasn't their mother wanted these two to die. And if they didn't want them to die, they wanted them to live the life of a disgusting experiment. So essentially, the witch hunters, French law made Charlotte and Victor the monsters they thought they were. But I question the morale of the people against the twins even more, because at the end of the day, they were just sold off to the cultists of the entity anyway. So did the French government use this whole, oh, they're demons, in order to rally the people around them to capture the twins? I think it's extremely possible that that was the scenario. But there you have it, ladies and gents. The twins, Charlotte and Victor Deshays? Dude, I know I'm pronouncing this wrong. What are your personal opinions on the story, the origins of the twins? Thank you so much for checking out this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you guys have any recommendations for other lore, for horror videos, for horror characters, comment down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more horror lore and mysteries. And I hope you guys clear your mind after this video and have an amazing day all to yourselves. Thank you so much, and as always, stay single.